maybe sending a clock with these hooded figures to give it to Charlotte. Why, I'm not sure. But this montage was the moment that my future Mickle theory kind of evaporated, because as soon as he said Noah, I was like, oh, damn it.
Welcome to the After Dark podcast with Anthony James and Konrad. Episode 4, Double Life. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Hello and welcome to the After Dark podcast with me, Anthony James, and Konrad.
Hello.
That's Konrad. This is the podcast where we take Konrad through Dark episode by episode. He's never seen it before, and we get to know what he thinks. And most importantly, we get to hear his theories, which is what we're all here for. I know that. Right, Konrad, how's your week been this week?
It's been very, very good. Thank you. How's yours been?
My week has been, it's always good, always good.
It's warm. It's a hot week.
Yeah, it was quite warm. Well, actually, yes, I think yesterday was quite warm, but then it started raining as well in the afternoon, in the evening time. That's the way it is in the UK and Ireland.
I'll tell you what as well, my dark experience this week has mirrored the temperature in that things are heating up in old Konrad's mind.
Yeah.
I've blown it wide open.
Except in Dark, actually, it's always raining.
That's true. Yeah, it's like Tim Burton's Gotham, where it's always kind of dark and raining.
Yeah, exactly. As I said last week, we're trying our hardest to get it up on podcasting apps. Bear with us. It'll be there before 2022. Right. Thank you very much to the comments. We had a lot of responses to what vixen means in German. A lot of responses.
Oh yeah, these are the ones I actually did see. Yeah,
well, these drew your attention, Konrad.
Yeah.
But it's very rude. So basically, apparently, vixen means masturbation, I suppose.
Nice, good one, 80s Ulrich.
Yeah, and what I really enjoyed about it was that so many people were willing to give us that information.
I know.
They were jumping at the keyboard, you know?
Barely anyone misled us by the looks of things as well. I would have taken that opportunity to feed us all kinds of misinformation. But...
Yeah, no one's actually trolling us in the comments, which is fantastic. Yeah. I know, yeah, that's what I would be doing too, just making up random stuff. Or maybe they're all group trolling us.
Yeah, that's true. We have no way of verifying. If only there was some kind of shared network where we could check what vixen actually means in German, but such a thing doesn't exist.
I don't know. There used to be something called Ask Jeeves. Is that still about?
It might be.
Maybe Ask Jeeves. Is he still alive? I don't know. Right. Anyway, let's get into it. What do you think?
Yep, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
So episode 4 opens with a montage with a voiceover of an old man, and he says, "Black holes are considered to be the hell mouths of the universe. Those who fall inside disappear forever. But where to? What lies behind a black hole? Along with things, do space and time also vanish there? Or would space and time be tied together and be part of an endless cycle? What if everything that came from the past was influenced by the future?" And then we get Helga Doppler with his little lovely checkered blanket over his knees. Tick tock, tick tock. What do you think?
This intro sequence is almost unfair with the amount of information it gives you, because it's like they know that the people watching this aren't going to be native German speakers. Yeah. So you're having to read the subtitles because there's a lot of information being hinted at in the subtitles. And meanwhile, there's a huge amount of very suggestive imagery on the screen as well.
I didn't even try to go through what the images were. I don't even have them in front of me. I'm not even going to try. You can do that.
I've gone down. Okay, so first things first. I don't know if this is H.G. Tannhaus talking. I'm still struggling to sort of separate out my sort of gruff voice.
I was gonna ask you, who did you think it was? Yeah, so
I think it's H.G. Tannhaus.
Okay.
But we've only actually heard him speak once, I think.
Yeah, just for the record, I know this doesn't have a video on this podcast, but I'm actually wearing my H.G. Tannhaus A Journey Through Time T-shirt right now.
Yeah. Nice, which I can confirm you do own. I have seen it.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. That's one thing I noticed about listening from last week's episode. I say fantastic a lot.
Well, I mean, it's a good word.
I know, it's a fantastic word. Right, keep going.
So yeah, first off, okay, I'm gonna take a dive into some lore here. So he's talking about hellmouths, which first I was like, oh, is this gonna be like a Doom adaptation. Because we're talking about Hellmouths. This is going to be like hell on earth. It's going to be a cyber demon in Vinden. But
Ulrich's face at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, he does look a bit like the Doom guy, actually, Ulrich, to be honest. But okay, so there is first a close-up. I can't actually remember where you see it, but it's of something that looks like a Celtic knot. Which is then
triple, like the trifecta.
Yeah, it's a tricula or something, but it's obviously not just Celtic. It's also like Norse and Northern European.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about that, and then I thought about where you often see that imagery, and it's often in like Norse religious and kind of mythological texts.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me thinking about Enos's tree box and how. I think Enos's tree box has it's not a Celtic knot, but I'm going to have to call it a Celtic knot because I can't remember the proper name for it, on it as well. And I think there might be some Yggdrasil stuff going on here with like a world tree that connects the 9 worlds. That's kind of the dive that I went down in this, but this intro is ridiculous. There's just so much in it.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
And Helge as well. I know I gave him a hard time last episode, and I stand by it. He never rose above sweeping graffiti off the floor, which says something about his competencies.
Also, he wasn't doing a very good job at that either.
No, he was doing a terrible job of it. It didn't even look like it was wet, to be honest. But he knows what's up, and trying to figure out what he knows throughout this episode is maddening. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this intro. Oh, there's the old stereo with the wooden figures on the shelves. So I was trying to figure out where and when that was, and I was also looking for it in this episode with no luck. But there's so much in this intro.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, if Helge goes on a walk through the woods, you know something's up.
Yeah.
Helge
doesn't walk blithely.
Yeah, he has a sixth sense, this man. Yeah, cool. There was also some cool comics up on the wall. I don't know, just thought I'd mention those. Just something that stuck out to me. We saw again the where is or when is Mikkel again. I think there was also a bit of the Stranger as well, but I can't quite remember what he was doing in the intro.
He was just staring at the comics on the wall, I think.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah. It's implied he was, but yeah. So go on.
So where was that then? Was that?
Well, that's the question.
Exactly.
That is the question. But I mean, I will say this now: the sort of inner thought process of seeing the Celtic knot to Enos's tree box to Yggdrasil led me to a realization, which I'll probably get into at the end of this episode. But I'm fairly confident it's right. And I'm fairly confident that I've blown Dark wide open here.
You've solved the puzzle already.
I've solved Dark. I have. I've cracked it. I know how this series ends.
You are Mikkel, and Dark is the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
You've solved it. Before we leave
podcast over.
Yeah, podcast over. See you later, guys. Before we leave this opening montage and sort of voiceover, I just wanted to say, last week we did a bit of a discussion about the reclaiming of the montage from rom-coms and things for this series, how it does a really good job of summing up the episode for you, letting you breathe, and it sort of reclaims that in a dramatic way. I wanted to mention here as well, I think this show also does the same for voiceover. Now, I know we've only seen it a few times, but it is something that will come back. And voiceover, I think, is something that has also been relegated to like the start of a teen comedy, you know?
Yeah.
So it was the summer holidays, right?
Yeah, record scratch.
Yeah, like a Baba O'Reilly. Bam, bam,
yeah.
Bam, bam, bam. So I think that is something to look out for as well. I think they did a really good job. I like the intrigue of not really knowing who's speaking in tongues of science of some sort.
Yeah, totally.
I just think they do a really good job of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think voiceover is often considered to kind of be it's a bit like a Zoom, like it's quite immersion breaking for the audience, which I don't actually agree with at all for either of those. But I think that's kind of the modern wisdom on it, is that as soon as you have a voiceover, you're kind of taking the audience out of it and making them look at what's going on the screen through like a veil of separation. But I think that's kind of the intention here, because you're almost like watching all of this sort of semi-voyeuristically, because it's hard to know like where you are and when you are and whether you're kind of there with these characters or whether this is all, because it plays so sort of fluidly with the idea of time. It's not the central premise isn't that you're kind of witnessing these events as they're happening necessarily. Maybe that's completely wrong, but that's the sort of sense I get from the show. And I think it's a really good way of sort of disseminating information while also sowing more mysteries and throwing out hooks. Because as I say, I had to watch this intro, no joke, probably about 4 or 5 times, just because there was so much in it that I was like going back and scribbling notes down as it was going on.
Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to say something other than it was really cool, you really need to watch it that many times.
Yeah.
Just to add to what you're saying about like not really knowing if we're seeing these characters in the story in the present or whether we're sort of detached from that and we're looking at it quite voyeuristically, I think that is sort of as well backed up by the idea that we've seen some of these characters in their younger forms when they're in the 80s, and we sort of know what they turn into. So especially even, I know it wasn't in this episode, but when we're watching them in the 80s, you really do get that sense of, well, we know where they're ending up. So this almost in a way doesn't feel like we're watching a story unfold. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It does feel like we're watching past and present sort of thing all at once. Yeah. But it's an interesting feeling when you're watching a show anyway. Opening credits, then we get the name of the episode, Double Life.
Yes.
Double Life. Right. Not much to say about that. We'll see if there's any themes as we go through. Now, then we get a scene, well, the first sort of main scene of the episode, I suppose, is in the Doppler household. And it is basically a setting up for what is, I think you could refer to as the Doppler episode of Dark. So this video is very Doppler family centric, I find.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's quite good because we haven't really got an insight into this family yet. Francisca's sort of been a mysterious character so far. We've got a bit of Peter looking guilty and praying. We've seen Charlotte at work, but now we're actually getting to see the inner workings of the family. I thought it was great. So it starts off with Francisca storming down with a lot of attitude into the room.
She's so angry.
So angry. Her little sister has taken her lipstick, she thinks, and she's screaming and she's screaming and she's screaming. I just love the acting with the sign language at the same time.
Yeah, I also love the fact that she shouts as she's walking out of her room, which is clearly not for Ellie because Ellie is deaf mute. It's for her mum and dad, which really struck me as the kind of thing that a teenager would do. Like, if I'm pissed off, I'm waking up everyone in the house to let them know.
Look what she has done, right? So another interesting part of this scene, this was very similar, I found, to the opening of the Nielsen family in the first episode with the one long camera shot. Now, this wasn't as long a camera shot, but it was a similar sort of dance around the family to introduce us to them. So Charlotte and Peter emerge from separate bedrooms.
Yeah.
So we learned that they're having trouble in their marriage. They're in separate bedrooms. Or maybe Peter was doing his morning prayer. We're not sure. But so then they sort of come down into the main area of the house, the living room. Francisca's going mad at Ellie. And then there was a great little bit of a dialogue between Charlotte and Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah.
Where Charlotte is speaking about Mikkel, and Elizabeth says, "Do you know who stole him?" That's the question. And then Elizabeth makes a reference to Vixen.
Oh, does she make a reference to that? I didn't catch that.
Yeah. She calls Mikkel a jerk-off.
Oh, I thought she said it was a show-off. Okay, that's very rude then.
Oh, no, sorry. A show-off and a jerk.
Yeah, show-off and a jerk. That's right.
But did you catch the... but it was definitely Vixen-esque, the sign language for jerk.
Yeah, she looked like she was doing the jerk-off motion with her hand, and I don't know enough about international sign language to know whether that's a legit sign or whether that's a little bit of flavour that Ellie's thrown in there herself.
Yeah, but also if she was speaking, what's the word? Hang on. I'm not going to ask that question. Our comments are too full of this. We need to stop getting the comments full of this subject. Right. Okay. So, any comments about this scene at all? Or?
So Ellie is great. She's great throughout this entire episode. And there are two things I really want to hone in on with her. When Francisca says, and this is, I'm almost certain that this is completely wrong, but when Francisca says to her that she doesn't buy her sort of doughy-eyed deaf mutes or deaf dumb act, and Ellie smiles in a way that is incredibly evil, my first thought was she's not actually deaf and dumb. So I'm fairly certain that's wrong, but I'm sticking to my guns on that one. I'm waiting for her to be revealed as some evil mastermind, and the theme of the young children somehow plotting against the adults in this town does come back later in this episode.
So you think that from birth she was able to fool everyone?
Yeah, she's like a sort of Stewie Griffin type character, where she's like a criminal mastermind. That, I'm telling you, that smile had all the hallmarks of a sociopath to me. But no, Ellie is great, and Francisca, I agree with what you said. This is very much like the Doppler episode, and it's frustrating in a way because it kind of really drills down on these characters and kind of pulls back a bit on the sort of broader story stuff for the most part. But at the same time, it's really nice to get a look at Charlotte, who's a really interesting character, see more of Francisca, who is a really interesting character, and get introduced to Ellie as well, who's brilliant. I love Ellie.
Yeah, I will just say now, as we're going through. Now, I'm a 29-year-old man. I don't really play favorites. That's more of like a 5-year-old's thing. Like, there's no such thing as a favorite color, right? But I would say that Elizabeth is one of my favorite characters in this whole show. Like, if those two characters, if you put a gun to my head and said, give me 2 favorite characters, it would be Elizabeth and Claudia. They're my 2 favorite characters in the show. It's not really important for you to know that going forward, but you might like to know it. So
they're definitely strong front runners for me at the moment, those two.
Yeah, exactly. So especially Elizabeth. Like, Elizabeth had so much personality from the get-go, and she's like the one who doesn't speak as well. So it's really impressive what this young actress is able to do.
Yeah, she's like, it's really hard as well to play a brat. Not brat. Elizabeth isn't like totally bratty, but she has some kind of bratty qualities, but it's really hard to strike that balance of being kind of a typically bratty, I don't know how old she is, like 10 or something like that, without actually being annoying. But she gets it perfect. Like, so later in the episode, when things become a bit more perilous for her, like, you feel sorry for her or you feel worried for her, because this actress just perfectly gets that balance right.
Yeah, it's great. Right, then we get Jonas having a look at his maps. There is a subtitle that comes up which says, "Where is the crossing?" Yeah,
again, Jonas is going into the bloody caves.
This sort of supports your theory that you had about this, there being some sort of thin place or crossing within the caves. I would say. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's... Well, we'll get more into this a bit later. All I'm going to say is I know that was Michael's theory, and that's kind of what's led into me having the theory of it. But it's started having some holes poked in it this episode, and I'll get. But I know that Jonas definitely believes that, and Michael obviously believed that as well.
So you're thinking that there may be a touch of unreliable narrator in this show?
Possibly.
Okay, that is a great feature. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I do. Right. Moving on. So we get that. Oh, it's actually sort of a continuation of the same scene, I suppose. Jonas then sort of goes downstairs. He's on the way to school, and Hannah is clearly having a bit of a hard time at the minute because Ulrich's left her. She seems to be having a harder time than when her husband died. But
yeah, she does. She just seems like she has all the hallmarks of depression here. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and she's just sitting in a dressing gown, smoking at the breakfast table.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is going on? Her legs are underneath her jumper.
Yeah.
But and then she asks her son to bunk school. Yeah, and I'm gonna get more into the dub in What the Dub, but there was a funny moment here where maybe it just didn't translate correctly. I'm not sure. But Jonas, as he was walking out, and Hannah said, "Why don't you stay off school?" He turned around and he said, "Mother." Right? Like, as in, like, it would have been absolutely fine if he went, "Mom," you know what I mean? But he went, "Mother." And it just read so strange. Like, but obviously it was mistranslated, or the mood wasn't hit. It's
well, that wouldn't be the first time on the dub, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he lies to her, though. He implies he sort of lies to her without explicitly lying, because he implies that he's going to school when he's actually going off into the caves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good catch.
I guess. I mean, would Hannah care? I don't know. Like, she'd probably have an issue with him bunking school to go hang around in the caves rather than keeping his mum company, I guess.
Yeah, she'll feel left out.
Yeah.
Come
with him.
Yeah, she should go with him in the caves. So the next scene, we see Helga and Peter in the old folks' home, and we get confirmation, I think for the first time earlier in this episode went through dialogue, but I think we get confirmation that Helga is Peter's dad.
Yeah.
So before this, I don't think you actually legitimately 100% knew if it was Charlotte's dad or Peter's dad. Maybe you did, but if we did, it was such a subtle line, but this is where we get full-blown confirmation of that. So he's sitting there, Helga, having a bit of a stress out, saying, I have to tell him. It has to stop. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Who do you think the him is that he's referring to?
I think I'm trying to think back to this point in the episode, because by the end of it, you kind of have heard a name and formed a theory.
Yeah.
I think I probably thought it was the hooded guy who's putting up the When Is Mickle stuff in Regina's hotel, even at this point, before we had a name to possibly associate with that guy.
Okay, interesting. I think you just let something slip there, but little tease out there about what your theory might be.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the next scene, which is more Elizabeth and more Charlotte. Elizabeth is in the back seat. Charlotte's driving. Charlotte pulls over because she notices that there's a wildlife, or what I expect is a wildlife camera of some sort, in a box on the side of the road. She gets out. She takes the memory card out of it. There was a great moment in this scene whenever, like, Charlotte, let's not forget, is the chief of police doing it. And Ali, whenever she sees her mom going and starts breaking open the box, Ali sort of sits up straight and looks around as if, like, let me check if anyone's watching.
Yeah. There were so many great bits in this scene, actually. Like, first off, Ellie's fox hat is great. Just let me put that out there. And then, yeah, Ellie's acting as if she's covering for her mum while she commits a crime on this, or doesn't commit a crime, but commits something a little bit dodgy on this deserted country road. And then when Charlotte actually gets the wildlife camera box open, there's a really funny sound effect they use. Like, they use like a really sort of stock great opening sound effects for her actually lifting the top off it, which made me laugh. And just the fact she spotted it as well.
Yeah.
It's like a really standard stock side effect. It's sort of like it's like up there with like the Wilhelm scream as something that you hear in loads of different stuff, and it really made me laugh.
Is it? You think is it actually an editing like in joke like the Wilhelm scream?
Probably, yeah. I'm almost certain it would be, because they didn't need to put it in. It just made me laugh. But yeah, and the fact she spots that wildlife box while she's driving, she clearly wasn't paying attention to the road.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but that was a great little scene, and Ali sort of telling her off as well, and Charlotte saying it's evidence, it's not stealing.
Yeah, they have a weird relationship, actually. Like, there's well, we'll get into it, I guess, when they say goodbye at school, but throughout
we can talk about that now. Yeah.
Well, just like, yeah, the way they say goodbye to each other, and then this scene here, and also their interaction in the opening scene and in the Doppler household, like. It seems like Ellie almost like wears the pants in this household. Really, like she's like 9 years old and she runs the family.
yeah. She's definitely full of personality to do so.
Yeah.
And I actually made a note. I actually said that she's very confident as well. Like, it sort of plays into that as well, because the way she just comes out says to her mum as well, "Oh, that's Yasin. We're dating."
Yeah. Yeah, she's got no reservations about it at all.
Yeah, exactly. So she's just like, most girls that age, or most children that age, because I can remember that age myself, you wouldn't want to really talk about that sort of thing with your parents, but she's right out there with it.
Yeah,
so.
She doesn't mind.
Yeah, either she's like too far gone from the innocence, or she's just too innocent to care. Right, so we sort of skipped the scene there, so we'll just briefly go over it. Jonas goes into the cave, and then the stranger is standing behind a tree, perfectly lined up for the camera. Thank you, stranger. Yeah. And he's checking his watch.
Yeah, the time being relevant seems important.
What do you think about that?
Well, I don't really have any theories about it, because I don't. This guy, as we'll find out later in the episode, this guy and his gang of people, however many there are, gang of fellow hooded folk, they know something, and they're working together to do something to do with, I guess, sending people back in time or doing something like that. I think this isn't my big theory, so I don't mind revealing bits of it here, but it's interesting that he's checking his watch as Jonas is going into the caves, because they must know something about either when the thin place is there or something along those, or maybe they've seen this before and they're like Jonas doing this exact thing before in another timeline. I'm not sure 100%, but it's very interesting that he checks his watch.
Yeah, it is, and the way he pulls his arm up as well, he's like, make sure it's at a 90-degree angle. And
it's a very sort of military action.
Yeah,
right? Sort of just make sure everyone can see this, and it's all very formal.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. We're back in school, and Magnus decides to drop in on like sort of a physics lesson.
Yeah,
well, I think it's actually a literature lesson.
Yeah, it's English literature. They're talking about talking about Goethe and
or German literature, I suppose, not English. But yeah. So, do you have any? I think it's going to come up in a YouTube comment question later. But do you have any comments on what the teacher was reading about in this scene?
So I actually read a bit of this, or I read the thing that he's reading from. So it's a poem called "The Sea Voyage" by Goethe.
Oh, you had actually read this before?
No, so I've read Faust, which Goethe wrote, which is like it's kind of apocryphally used to describe like the Robert Johnson meeting the devil at a crossroads and selling a soul for a guitar to play guitar kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is I don't know if the Faustian stuff is gonna come into Dark at all, but that's why I started reading about it. The Sea Voyage, I wasn't sure. It was hard to really unpick what he was saying. It's obviously important because otherwise it wouldn't be in the script. And certainly what the teacher's saying about it's the doubling, the sort of beginning and end matching each other. I guess maybe just thematically, it is leaning into what H.G. Townhouse kind of says throughout this episode about things having a fixed beginning and end and then being effectively the same thing. Whether there's more to it than just the sort of themes, I'm not sure, but it was another one of those scenes like the intro where it just gets you thinking and gets you kind of analyzing what you've already seen.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And like, as you say, it might just be a thematic thing.
Yeah.
So obviously the commenter wanted to look into that a little further, but I'll mention them by name later, and then we'll just say we've answered this one, just because I can't remember what the name was now, but just to give them the credit of that question.
Yeah, sure.
They just want to know. So one thing I wanted to mention about this scene was just how like the teacher just backed down immediately.
Yeah, like Magnus just waltzes on in.
Yeah, Magnus, you're in the wrong class. Are you going to continue?
Yeah, do go on. It's like, no, Magnus, get out.
Yeah, just leave the classroom, please. No, I'd like extra English literature, please. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting thing to note. We get I don't know if it's confirming certain things you were speaking about.
My God.
Like even down to like even talking about ornithology and stuff. It seems to be sort of confirming a few things. Okay, so we get a pathologist cutting open a bird. I found what was interesting is Charlotte and Ulrich seem to have different pathologists that they go to.
Yeah, different animal dissector people.
Well, the one with the glasses was in the 80s.
He was in the 80s, wasn't he? Yeah, that's Egon. Okay, fair enough.
But this, remember, Ulrich went to the human pathologist, so this actually must be a specialized vet pathologist.
Yeah, I would assume this is a vet.
Yeah, so basically there's white spots on the bird, which they learn sort of came about after Chernobyl. Charlotte starts to put things together, like 33 years, the children going missing, the birds. She says that it must be all connected somehow.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this scene?
Well, so first of all, if you check the tapes, episode 1, I said the birds were all dying because they were losing their sense of direction and flying into the ground, which this coroner corrects. So that's another one on the board for Konrad. Thank you very much.
Hang on. Were they flying? I don't know if they were flying into the ground. Like, remember whenever
when Egon was walking
around?
When
Egon was walking around in the forest, they didn't look like they were flying into the car and stuff.
Yeah, I did. I'm going to claim this because it gets me a point.
I will give it to you. I
know what you mean. Like what this pathologist said didn't really jibe with what we'd actually seen happen. But for the purposes of me getting another one on the board, I'm gonna claim it.
Yeah, you can have it.
It's interesting that she's only sort of vaguely remembering it. I feel like if you've seen this sort of phenomenon happen more than once, I suppose when she was younger, from what we've seen so far of the 80s, she's only seen 1 or 2 dead birds with these markings, as opposed to what she saw. I guess it would be yesterday in this chronology where it's like hundreds. But I wonder whether there's some kind of memory altering stuff going on here as well, that's maybe making it difficult for her to recall it, or whether it's just a case that it didn't stand out to her in the past, and now she's kind of piecing it together.
Yeah, but I know what you mean, and the way she was speaking out, she did seem quite vague. But I think she brought out all the information that was available eventually. There, she did remember everything eventually. Like she was talking about, like there wasn't anything that she at that age would have realized had happened that she didn't remember. Like she remembered the birds falling, she remembered the white spots, she remembered the children had gone missing at that time too.
Yeah,
or Mads had. So there wasn't really anything that she missed in terms of her memory.
That's true. I think it's interesting that they name dropped Chernobyl again. That's twice in 2 episodes now, which I wonder if that's gonna play a more significant part. It certainly seems like obviously the nuclear plant is going to be pretty key to what's going on, at least in the immediate future. But it doesn't feel like they're name dropping Chernobyl just absently.
Yeah, definitely going to be something to do with nuclear power. I think there it will be anyway. So not much anything to say about this, but Jonas is walking through the cave again. We'll check back in with him later. You stay in there, Jonas. Then we have Ulrich waking up in Mikkel's bed, which is quite tragic in a way. Like, I can just imagine having a child missing, and I think it's exactly what you would do. You would sleep in their bed whenever you've been out for 3 days looking for them. So Katarina's sitting there looking at him. We all know that there's more than one thing going on in Katarina's head. I'm sure this is a nightmare for her. She knows that he's cheating. She knows her son's gone missing. Can't even imagine. Just to break all this tension, we do have a great poster on the wall. The great Mikkel,
this poster is amazing.
The great Mikkel Houdini.
Such a good poster. I hope he made it himself. I believe he did.
What I really enjoyed about this poster, sometimes when I watch films, I get really annoyed at small things, like small hills to die on,
Yeah.
I'm quite particular in that way, but there was something that really annoyed me about certain shows whenever they have pictures on the wall or they have like things kids made, and the picture of the child is as if they took it that day.
Yeah.
The Mikkel on the poster is clearly a couple of years younger, and that just made me love it even more,
Yeah, it's just to be honest, I didn't notice that, but yeah, little things like that give the whole, I guess the whole mise en scène a kind of verisimilitude to make it feel like it's a real place rather than just a set that some actors are acting in.
Yeah, exactly. Right, what did you have you had anything to say about this scene with Katarina and Ulrich?
Just what you've hit on, really. Like the Mikkel Houdini poster is amazing, and I find the Katarina and Ulrich interactions, brief that they are in this episode, really interesting because I think they're very realistic for how a couple who are having like marital problems anyway would deal with the loss of a child, where they can't really comfort each other because they're both coming to terms with like the reality of their relationship or how their relationship is falling apart. So they're just basically dying on the inside because they just have they have no one to turn to or nothing to cling to anymore. So yeah, it's we don't see them very much in this episode, but what we do see of them is quite compelling.
Yeah, and I also will maybe I'm sort of jumping the gun a little bit here, but I wanted to do this before I forget. There is a great contrast between this scene and then the scene whenever Ali is missing later in the episode, and Peter and Charlotte, who we know haven't been sleeping in the same rooms. We know there's some sort of adultery in some way going on there maybe as well. But at that moment, those two people truly come together and Peter is comforting Charlotte in that moment. So the contrast there is really maybe if this had happened a year before in the timeline, that wouldn't be happening because obviously Katarina's just found out, and we know that Charlotte said something about a year ago, you made me a promise. So it is a different timeline in both of the relationships, but I just thought it was a cool contrast in the two relationships. Yeah,
absolutely. Like I think there's very deliberate lines of comparison drawn between Charlotte and Ulrich in this episode. And it's interesting to see how both of them deal with the potential or the reality of one of their children going missing. Yeah, it's great. Right, then I'm just going to go through, there's a sort of a couple of scenes in a row here that all add up, and I'm just going to go through them all at one time because it sort of is the best way to do it, I think. So we get, Charlotte goes back to the
back to the police station. Voller, the one-eye guy, he says to her about says to her about checking the tracks or checking the something or other, the plates. I don't know what he's checking.
I think it was the tires he was checking.
The tires, yeah. Oh, yeah, the tires, yes. And so she says, off you go. She then goes into her office. She sees that the time of disappearance was between 9:30 and 10:30, which matters because when she rings up Peter, he says that he was at the office until 10.
Yeah.
So obviously he wasn't accounted for at that time. She also sees on the memory card that she stole, as Ali put it, she sees Peter's car driving around that area at that time.
Yes.
Now, Peter then obviously denies that. He says he was at the office. I'm just going to say, in terms of for the discussion now, I'll mention it now. There is extra scenes in a few minutes where Charlotte then goes around to a prostitute's caravan, it seems, who I assume is a prostitute because I think they do talk about clients. So then she asks, has Peter been around? The prostitute puts together that... I'm going to tell you, the prostitute's name is Benny. Okay, so I'll say Benny. So Benny says, I never forget a... I'll let you fill it in.
Yeah, very explicit.
Very explicit.
Very explicit indeed, this scene.
So that sort of puts into perspective about what Charlotte was hoping. It's really, really tragic. It's, again, really tragic. Charlotte was hoping that on the night of Mikkel's disappearance, that Peter was at the prostitute's place.
Yeah.
She was hoping that he was cheating on her again. That's so, it's so moving that I don't know why I've never actually seen something so nuanced in like a mystery crimey thing. It's really, really cool. I like that little touch.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot in Charlotte's performance in this episode. I think probably less so in Peter's, although it's still good. But Charlotte's kind of runs the full gamut of emotions with Peter here. From sort of, there are times where she seems like she's protecting him. So when Voller is kind of picking up the printout of Peter's car that the wildlife camera's picked up, and is kind of inquiring about what she's looking at. She doesn't want to tell him because she clearly, before she gets her husband in sort of legal hot water, she wants to sort of check it for herself to actually see what's happening rather than, rather than sort of betraying the trust of her marriage. But at the same time, she's, going to this prostitute hoping that he has cheated on her rather than been involved somehow in this crime. So there's a lot of really, really good dramatic work between these two in this episode, and it's fascinating, this set of scenes. And obviously the cutaway to show Peter talking to her on the phone, which I don't know if you want to get into after this, but that was really interesting as well, because it kind of sets up Charlotte for the rest of the episode, really.
Do you mean whenever he's got the red dirt on the cut?
Yeah. So when he's clearing out the, I don't know what they're actually called, the mats that go underneath your feet and the front of a car, but when he's sort of cleaning the red dirt out of one of those, so there's lots of different things going on here, which I find really interesting. So obviously there's a reveal that Peter is bisexual or gay, or not interested in having sex with his wife anymore. Yeah, which is kind of the core sort of schism in his relationship with Charlotte. But then there's also the fact that, we know the body that they found had red dirt on the shoes, and we know that he had some of it in his car. So there's like this really interesting back and forth that's recontextualizing how we've seen him act prior to this episode. We saw him crying in his car when news about the missing children was being read out, and recanting his Alcoholics Anonymous prayer. And it's kind of, each new time we see something about him, it's saying, oh, was he just crying because he'd been sleeping with someone else and he felt guilty? But then it's like, no, actually he did have red soil in his car, so he is involved in this in some way. And it's just this really interesting back and forth, which never really resolves itself, which is why it's a bit frustrating at the end of the episode. But it's definitely, it keeps its hooks in you.
Yeah, it definitely does. And just to touch on something you said there, my analysis of that is exactly the same. Something I hit on as well, the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer, the Serenity Prayer, I think it's called. That is, as soon as you find out that actually he is suppressing his sexuality in a way, like he's sort of living a lie, I suppose. Or he's in turmoil over his sexuality anyway. He doesn't really know what to do with it. It definitely, in an interesting way, recontextualizes that. And it sort of it implies that maybe he's actually sought help about it, or maybe it's just because he's a therapist, he sort of knows the channels in which to try and help yourself. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I would assume the Dark is very specific about kind of not showing you, or thus far at least, not showing you these characters' interactions with the wider world. So I wonder if there are even channels for him to seek help about that within Vinden, but possibly, or yeah, like you say, maybe he just knows, the coping mechanisms for alcoholics and drug addicts because he's a therapist.
Yeah, so maybe, but definitely interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on Peter going forward. So. Next scene, we get some more questionable behavior from a Nielsen male.
Oh God!
We get Magnus going on a nice little jaunt through the woods, keeping an eye on Franziska.
He didn't even bring a ladder. That's my main takeaway from that scene. Is that fence is far too. He did bring a rug. I'll give him that. So he brought a rug so he could climb over the barbed wire. But
hang on. You're talking about Ulrich.
Oh yeah, sorry. Who are you talking about? This is Magnus.
Magnus following Franziska.
Oh yeah, that is also questionable. Like Magnus throughout this is, he's Magnus's behavior throughout this episode. If I was in Franziska's shoes, I would not have ended this episode the way she ended it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like actually we can talk about just in one big block if you want Magnus and Franziska's relationship. I find that, as you say, basically he sees her with money. He picks up money from a box in the middle of train tracks somewhere.
Yeah.
He then sort of follows her back to school. She is part of some sort of rhythmic gymnastic group.
Yeah,
I don't know what
dancing.
Ribbon dancing. So he's watching her through the window. He then goes and steals money out of her bag.
Yeah.
He comes back in. My note on this scene, where he comes back in after she's ribbon dancing, is that Magnus seems to have a strange ownership over Franziska.
Yeah, he definitely does.
I think that on the face of it is it makes Magnus very unlikable. But I see it's really strange because he's not unlikable to me because his brother's just gone missing. I feel like he's becoming very protective over the people in his life that he loves, or I suppose he fancies. So he probably is in a state of mind where he thinks he needs to protect her. Obviously, I'm not excusing. He shouldn't go into her bag. He shouldn't be stalking her. Absolutely not. But I'm just saying I understand the motive of him wanting to protect her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, just to go back to it, because I kind of ruined your lovely setup of it by thinking this was going to be the Ulrich scene. But so the bit where Franziska's walking through the woods, which they must be the noisiest woods in the entire universe, but they're really nicely shot. And yeah, I mean, Magnus's behavior, I think he seems like someone, like you say, it does seem quite believable. I think his behavior, it seems like someone who wants to trust Franziska because he likes her, and he's projecting that in a pretty unhealthy way by being massively overprotective or maybe infatuated with her. But I don't think it's coming from a place of malice or perversion. I think he's just not kind of leveraging his emotions healthily, which is totally believable for someone whose little brother was kidnapped 36 hours ago. But I mean, yeah, I really like their relationship. I think I really like Franziska in general in this episode, and Magnus, I don't dislike Magnus. He's just behaving in a way that, in the kind of erratic way that I would expect someone to behave when like his dad, I guess, as we'll see in a second, Ulrich is doing all sorts in the woods himself. Yeah,
so Ulrich actually goes to the power plant. As you say, he brings a blanket, which was pretty clever of him. Smarter move than I thought he would.
Well, yeah, but he doesn't bring a ladder. That fence is way too big. That's probably where he cut himself, to be honest.
Yeah, but that'd be a bit conspicuous, wouldn't it? Pulling the ladder out of his car, walking.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
He might have had to walk 3 miles. He wouldn't want to carry the ladder. But what did you think about the sort of... Now, my personal take on it is it's just like a thematic sort of mirroring, I suppose, if you excuse the terminology there, of the hooded figures.
Yeah.
So Ulrich they're very clearly trying to draw that imagery into Ulrich as well.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, I think it's just reminding you of that imagery, not necessarily saying that Ulrich is related to those people, though, maybe he is, maybe it is as explicit as that, but I think it's more just that sense that these people are out there and are kind of watching over everything that's happening in Vinden, or giving the impression that they are. And by reusing that imagery, even when they're not present in the scene, it reinforces that.
Yeah, exactly. I think I would agree with that. So we then get Jonas back in the cave. He hears something, again, big, loud noise.
Yeah.
It quickly cuts away to Helga, who I think is saying something like TikTok, you need to tell him, general Helga stuff.
He's saying the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning here, I think. I was just like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think that links back maybe to something or who you think is HG Townhouse at the beginning of the episode. I think he said something about maybe cycle. I'm not sure. Something like that. It was something about the beginning of the end anyway.
Yeah.
But it sort of links into that a little bit. Jonas then comes out of the cave, goes back to his bike, and someone has left a red string on his bike.
Yes. And so this entire episode, as I say, like as I said at the beginning, like I formed a couple of wild theories throughout this episode. One wasn't really related to this episode at all, but more it was me reflecting on this episode and what I've seen before. But the red knot and what happens with Jonas and
we can talk about that right now. I don't mind.
Well, when the guy comes into Jonas's so there's two montages in this scene. This is quite a short one, but in this episode rather, and this is the shorter of the two. But obviously he gets the red knot left. We know that the guy who I'm going to refer to as Noah, because I think the guy we've seen so far who set up the Vanis Mikkel crime scene photos in Regina's hotel. I think that guy is Noah.
Hang on, are you recanting a previous theory of yours?
I may be.
Okay.
Maybe more on that later.
Okay.
I like that. So I think that guy's Noah based on where we end up with this episode. But the thing that's confusing me is, okay, we know he's watching Jonas from afar, so he doesn't want to talk to him or interact with him, presumably. Yet I think he's got to be the person who left this little red knot on Jonas's bike.
Yeah.
And he appears to be later in the episode. Well, he's coming into his home and knows exactly where the map is. So that seems suspicious that he knows where it is in Jonas's room. And then he's marking things on the map. So yeah, this is kind of what I mean about this episode being not in a bad way, but it's quite frustrating at the end of it because there's just so many questions left unanswered at the end of this episode. And yeah, this was a big one. Like how is the guy who I think is Noah and Jonas, how are they related to one another, or like what does Noah want with Jonas?
Yeah, interesting. Cool. You talked about earlier about how sort of the finding of the red dirt sort of leads Charlotte on the rest of the journey in the episode, sort of thing. So she goes around to sort of a cabin in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, and she has a look inside. She finds the red dirt on the floor.
Yeah.
She then walks over, and we've seen then where the bunker is. That's where the bunker is located. Yeah. And she goes down into the bunker, and gets a call. Then Ulrich has been found at the nuclear power plant, but we'll get into that in a minute. So, what do you think about Charlotte's little escapade at the cottage?
The Doppler cabin. I should say as well, I think the phone call here is actually where the coroner or the pathologist says to her, the birds died by flying into the ground. So,
yes, of course, yeah.
But, still one on the board. I think this is really smartly shot because obviously this cabin comes back later, but them not showing you what's in the cabin and their use of negative space. So when Charlotte walks into it and just looks around, she kind of disappears into this yawning blackness, and it's just very, very tense. And a really smart way to use the negative space on the screen, and obviously doesn't reveal anything to the audience as well. And then there's a lot of questions here as well. Like, what is this cabin? Why is it just some random cabin out in the woods? Why does it have what appears to be a kind of World War II era bunker set aside that's completely empty? Obviously we know Peter's been here. He must have been. So what was he doing in that cabin with that boy? And I guess that's probably where Charlotte's head is as well. But there's so many questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. So obviously, like we know that we're in Germany, so that World War II-esque bunker might just be a World War II bunker.
That is true, yeah. But I mean, it looks like it's, well, the door isn't completely kind of lichened over or rusted shut, so it looks like it sees some use, and Charlotte knows it's there. So yeah, it's odd that there's just a bunker there that is at least kind of in use. And I think maybe she turns the light on. I can't actually remember.
Yeah,
now.
She does. There is.
So there's still electricity to it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. Cool. We get Ali and her boyfriend Yasin talking.
Yeah.
And
Yasin's an idiot.
Yeah, he's an idiot. I mean, she's entertaining him with the story about how snails eat each other's genitals and I don't know.
Yeah, her the way she kind of play acts a male snail having its penis bitten off and then becoming a girl snail is so funny. She does a little kind of, I can't really do it for podcasts, but she does this little kind of hopping motion with her shoulders, and it's really funny.
Yeah. Great physical actor.
Yeah.
So then she sort of says, my mum will be here any minute now. So Yasin and his mum sort of tear away, and then Ellie is left by herself. We then, Charlotte actually got a call while she's in the bunker saying, oh no, maybe it was actually in the car. Yeah, she calls Peter and says, can you pick up Elizabeth, because I have to go to get Ulrich basically from the nuclear power plant. So we'll say more about the fact that Ellie is not got no one to pick her up in a minute. Oh, actually, no, we can speak about that now, I suppose. So Ellie actually ends up deciding to walk home on her own.
Yeah.
We see that she does have the lipstick.
Yeah, of course she does.
Great little reveal.
Yeah.
And then she's walking, jumping, having fun in the puddles. And then we see Helga walks out into the rain, into the forest. Again, we see that means trouble's up. Peter arrives at the school, gets told that the teacher went home sick, so they got off early, and it's all very, very ominous. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Ellie finding the Ryder bar is a great little calling card. Although Noah and his gang, they're such bad litter bugs. I don't understand why they're just littering all the time. It's so unnecessary. But yeah, it's a great little kind of visual cue that something bad is potentially about to happen. Ellie, yeah, as we said before, she's immediately become quite likable in this episode. So when you find out that something bad might be about to happen to her, it really ramps up the tension. And as you've said as well, Helge going off on his own into the woods is normally a sign that something bad's going on, because it happened. Did it happen? No, yeah, he went wandering off to the PTA meeting at the school, didn't he? When Mikkel went missing. I was slightly curious about, there's like an establishing shot of Helga's care home, and one of them is a very quick shot of like a tire on a stick, and I don't understand what's up with that, but it's something I noticed.
I'll have a look at that later. I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, it's really weird. But yeah, it's just a good way of really kind of kicking things into gear for the final third of the episode.
Yeah. What did you think about Ulrich being like a little scolded boy in the front of the car with his head down?
Yeah, he's like he's sort of like, don't tell me what to do, Mum. Yeah. And then gets he actually has quite a good monologue here.
Oh yeah, when he finally starts going at her. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I suppose really it's been 36 hours since Mikkel went missing. He's obviously not speaking to Katerina. So I guess he's probably not really been able to speak, like really rant at anyone about how he's feeling. So this is probably the first time he's opened up about it. But it's a really good display of how helpless he feels and how angry that makes him, which is really encapsulated in how he's behaved in the last two episodes. But it's interesting to see how Charlotte behaves once it becomes a threat or a possibility that has happened to her as well, as opposed to Ulrich.
Yeah, like before we get into the Charlotte bit, it's interesting. Ulrich has now sort of become what Jürgen was in the first episode. We sort of seen his Jürgen Obendorf when Eric went missing. We've seen his trajectory into like the father. He's part of the police, but even he's saying no one's doing anything. you know?
Yeah. One thing I did note in the scene in the car as well was, so Ulrich, I'm not sure whether he was actually being specific here or whether he was just talking generally, but he was talking about Alexander and saying, why couldn't it have been his son that was taken?
Yeah.
Which I found interesting because I don't think we've met Alexander's son yet, or at least it hasn't been made explicit who Alexander's son is. But
I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to say anything just in case, but I'm not sure about. I think we may have had clues through dialogue who his son was.
Okay.
Well, let me put it this way: do you know who Alexander's wife is?
Let me think. No, I don't think so. If I was going to guess, I'd say it's Regina, but that's just because they seem like a match made in heaven.
Okay, so I will not say anything because clearly then there hasn't been an explicit reveal. So we'll let you experience that in your own time.
Okay.
Okay, so then we get obviously then Charlotte finds the Elizabeth's hat, and then we sort of know something suspect's going on here. I don't really have much to add to there. Sort of the feelings there are quite obvious, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's the ticking clock, basically. You find a hat, something bad has happened, and based on what we've already seen that's normally a really bad sign that someone's going to end up.
Yeah, and
at years in the past.
And at that as well, like, it's sort of, if we're relating this back to a normal sort of crime mystery show, around this point in the series, if there was going to be another occurrence, this is around the time it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
we're all, once it happens, we're like, oh no, now it's ramping up.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, we find out through the part of the montage that actually Ellie is all right, and Franziska comes in, and we have Peter and Charlotte in each other's arms, comforting each other.
Yeah.
Which is very in stark contrast to, in the same montage, Ulrich and Katerina standing apart from each other while Katerina vacuums.
Yeah.
And then Franziska comes in, and then soon after, thankfully, Ellie returns. And when she returns, she very interestingly has a watch. And the pocket watch that she has, she says that she got it from someone called Noah. And then she gives it to Charlotte, and it actually says inside for Charlotte.
Yes.
Also, we've also got the funny moment where Franziska slaps Ellie for having.
Yeah.
That was so realistic in terms of siblings, I think.
Yeah, I 100, as someone with both a younger brother and a younger sister, I very much empathize with that behavior. Just give him a hug to let them know that you love them, but also give them a slap just to remind them who's boss.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you think about the watch is my question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the watch, I mean, we know that H.G. Tannhaus loves a clock.
Yeah.
That's been well established. And this looks like so he says that she used to own it, didn't Ellie says that to Charlotte, I think. Or am I misremembering that?
I can't remember exactly the terminology, but did she say something like it says it's yours or something?
Yeah, so I think my read of it was that it was something that maybe Charlotte had in her past that she lost, or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, my gut instinct was that it was something to do with something to do with H.G. Tannhaus, maybe sending a clock with these hooded figures to give it to Charlotte. Why, I'm not sure. But yeah, this montage was the moment that my future Mickle theory kind of evaporated, because as soon as he said Noah, I was like, oh, damn it, that's probably who that guy is, probably who the hooded guy is. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so other notes I had on this montage: really good score as well. Like it sounded like The Knife to me, like the band The Knife. I don't know if it was, but yeah, it was really good bit of music. And yeah, the hooded figure going into the cabin was fascinating as well.
Oh, yes. Going into the cabin, which we know is somehow related to the Doppler family. Peter's been there, adds in a load of intrigue. We then also, as I mentioned earlier, we get the stranger making a mark on the map. We're not quite sure what that was about yet. Yep. We also get Helga saying, I have to stop Noah. So now Helga is saying that he knows the name Noah.
Yep. And it's the first time he's kind of said that name.
Yeah.
Which is, I wonder if he said it before and they just haven't shown it to us, but it feels poignant.
Yeah, it does. And then the episode ends with Yasin Storming, I just love the idea of Yasin walking through the forest, talking. Like, I can imagine a child at that age, like, talking to themselves.
Yeah.
But because he is deaf and dumb,
Yeah.
he's talking to himself in sign language, which is great.
Yeah. I'd never thought about that before. And to be honest, this is a sign of how subtitles affect me. I didn't notice that he was signing to himself and not talking until my second watch of this scene. I just didn't notice that he wasn't talking when the subtitles were coming up. But yeah, I also love the way that I'm sure this is just kind of a little throwaway thing, but I love the way that he's wearing kind of 80s clothes as well. Like, he's wearing high tops. And it's, just a really cool way of mirroring what maybe is going to happen to him.
Yeah, cool. He sees like a little surfer dude. It's not really a surfer dude, but he's on a bit of wood, so it looks like a surfer dude. Sort of chiseled out of wood.
Surfer acorn man.
Safer, yeah, exactly. And he picks it up, and then a hooded figure says, Noah sent me to get you, or Noah wants me to take you to him, or whatever. So we can assume that Yasin is going to be taken now. So what do you think of the ending?
Okay, so, right, here we go. This leads quite nicely into the first of my theories, which is less serious, but I'm standing by it. So the fact that he says, Noah sent me, and you must be Yasin, means that Noah has met, or Yasin has met Noah before, because he wouldn't say Noah sent me if the name didn't mean anything to Yasin. And we know from the end of the montage that Noah has met Ellie now as well, and has let her go, or sent her back to her parents or anything. So there's some kind of I think at the very least there's some kind of, I don't want to say grooming because that sounds horrible, but there's some kind of operation where these guys are getting to know these kids before trying to send them back in time, or whatever it is they're doing to them. But the way that Ellie smiled at the beginning of this episode, and like when Francisca accused her of like not, or as Francisca said, she didn't buy her deaf dumb thing, and the way Yasin kind of looks slightly evilly up at the figure when he says Noah sent me, made me think that the kids are in on it. So I'm standing by that.
Maybe the hooded figures run the deaf and dumb school.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe they make them all pretend to be deaf and dumb, and they make.
Oh, does the guy sign to Yasin? I can't remember if he does.
No, he doesn't.
They're not deaf and dumb. I'm calling it now. It's all a plot. It's all a play act. Oh boy.
But
okay.
But you could also just take that he actually doesn't know Yasin, and he doesn't actually know that Yasin can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, that's true. But my theory is more fun. So
okay, fair enough.
So I'm going with the young kids are in on it, and there's some kind of Machiavellian plot to kill all the adults in Vinden going on here. It's fascinating. That little sort of reveal at the end with Noah, and as you said before, him going into Jonas's room and marking stuff on the map, and the voiceover from, I guess, is H.G. Tannhaus again, talking about the string of Ariadne, which is the string that Ariadne gave Theseus to help him escape the labyrinth.
To help him find the center of the labyrinth.
Yeah. Well, to
help him get out after he. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he put the string down. He found the center, killed the Minotaur, and then got out again.
To get out. Yeah.
So it's that definitely ties into the kind of labyrinthine nature of the caves, but maybe also the sort of more or less corporeal labyrinth of time as a concept. It all start. The questions posed here don't really get answers, which is why at the end of this I was like, what's happening? It's really frustrating, but it definitely makes me want to watch the next episode.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, do you want to get into the roundup?
Yeah, sure.
Well, Konrad, overall thoughts of this episode?
Okay, so it was good. I think it's probably the weakest of the first four, which is not to say it was a bad episode, but there was less action's probably not the right word for it, but there were less kind of plot developments in this. It had a slightly slower pace than the first three episodes. But with that said, I really enjoyed the interaction with the Doppler family, and getting to know more about their characters. And obviously I haven't gone into one of them yet, but I came out of this episode with one wild theory that I'm going to cling to.
What,
and,
not the Noah theory, or is that the one you're referencing?
What? So Noah, who Noah is? Do you mean?
Yeah, is that one of your theories?
Well, yeah. So I think that guy's Noah. I guess that is one of my theories. Yeah, I was thinking more about the kids being evil and in on it. that's my.
I didn't realize. Okay, so you are sort of definitely going with that.
I'm sticking to my guns on that until proven otherwise.
Okay.
And I haven't gotten into the other one yet. I don't know when you want to go through that, but
well, what we'll do first is do my absolutely pointless comparison of IMDb ratings, and then we can do it.
All right, nice.
So
it was a good episode though. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so the people of IMDb have spoken, 9,000 or 8,300 votes. 8.4 they gave this, which straight off the bat, I'm going to remind you, Secrets was 8.3, 8.2, Past and Present, the last one was 8.7, and then they went back to 8.4. I disagree with that out the gate for me. It's not the second best episode so far, I don't think.
No, but I mean, 10,000 people can't be wrong. No, I think this is probably the worst episode so far, which, again, is not to say it's a bad episode.
And I hesitate to use the word worst,
Yeah.
Because when you use negative words like worst, people assume you're hating on it. No,
yeah.
We could say that it was the least best.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Like, we'll use positive reinforcement. It was the least good episode.
Yeah.
But that's still, it's still it was still really good. I still wanted to watch the next episode. Yeah. I would probably say maybe high 7s for this is where I'd probably land on this. Like 7.8-ish is probably what I put it at.
Cool. Yeah, I would agree with you. Okay, and to be honest with you, your opinion matters more than anyone else because you're actually watching this weekly. No one else in the world has watched this weekly. I'm telling you that. So
yeah,
you're
I'm watching it as if it came out in like 1987.
Yeah.
Wait, when did they go back in time to? 1986. Yeah, there we go.
So you actually are able to give a genuine rating of each episode, which no one else can do, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so big theory, go.
Okay, so I was thinking about this on my second watch through because obviously I found out that there is a Noah, and I'm pretty sure it's the guy who I've been referring to as Future Mickle up until this point, because we've seen that guy's face and we get to have a name for that character. So my current theory, this isn't the big theory, but my current theory for that guy is that guy's name is Noah, which then made me wonder, okay, who is Mickle? Because he's gone back in time, so he must have grown up to be someone. Okay. So you're gonna have to bear with me for a second here.
Right.
So at the beginning of the episode, we got Celtic knots, which leads into Yggdrasil mythology about 9 world stuff.
Okay.
And the world tree, which Enos has on her tree box.
Right.
And then I was just thinking about Enos and Mickle's relationship, and I was like, oh, they're very like kind of maternal, like the relationship that those two have, considering they just met each other. So then I went on a Google deep dive, looking up what people's names meant, and I was like, okay, we know that Enos doesn't have children at the point that Mickle turns up in the 80s, and then I googled what Mickle's name means, and it means gift from God. And I'm pretty sure that Enos is going to effectively adopt Mickle and that he becomes Michael.
Right.
And then I went on a further deep dive and I was like, okay, so I'm pretty sure Mickle becomes Michael. What does Mads' name means? And that also means gift from God. So I think Mads got sent back in time to become someone else's son and is then one of the grown-ups in 1986. So that's where I am at the moment. But that's I feel like I might be right on this, but that's where my theory has gotten me to so far.
Interesting. That's one of my favorite theories of yours.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong, but but the fact you have, honestly, if you could have been with me when I was like, okay, I'm going to go look up what Mickle means. Typed into Google, Mickle meaning gift from God. I was like, oh boy, here we go. We're off to the races here.
What does Enos mean?
I didn't look up Enos, actually. It probably means lovely.
So you looked up one name, decided on your whole theory.
No,
like,
do you know the ones
research
I looked up?
Over.
I looked up, I'll tell you the ones I looked up. I looked up Mickle. I looked up Mads. I looked up Egon. I looked up, what's Helga's dad's name? Bernd.
Burnt, yeah.
I think. Burnt, yes. That means bear. And I looked up Tronte.
Oh.
I didn't look up any of the women, which probably makes me a massive
Right.
chauvinist.
I love how in your mind it's Tronte.
Yeah. I know it's Tronte, but I'm going to call him Tronte from now on. But yeah, those are the only names I looked up. For some reason, that was enough for me.
Okay, cool. I think like you're saying that it's based on looking up names and stuff, your theory, but I think you've actually grounded that theory in some really cool stuff in the show, like Ines' relationship with Mikkel. It seems like it's not the craziest theory you've come up with, in my opinion, even though it does seem crazy. I
think, yeah, it could still be wrong, but it's just that Ines is obviously very protective over Mikkel already. We've seen that much, and she seems like, we know she doesn't have children, but she also seems quite maternal generally, like she would be a good mother. And the question remains, where did Michael come from? We don't know, and we know that Mikkel has gotten stuck in the past. Now, obviously, this does poke some holes in my theory that Mikkel is definitely going to get back to his correct timeline, because, unless we count aging 30 years and becoming Michael as getting back to his correct timeline.
Well, to be honest with you, if your theory is correct, he didn't, because he died 4 months before or 5 months before Mikkel went missing.
That's true. Yeah.
So he didn't actually ever return to that timeline.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what my future Mikkel theory, being the hooded guy, is no more. This is now the theory I'm clinging to. Okay.
Out of curiosity, you've already decided you don't like the future Mikkel theory in terms of the stranger. When do you think you're going to get an answer for the sort of not just the Mikkel theory, but also your new Noah theory? In your mind, when do you think they're going to give you these answers?
With Noah, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some things that are just never answered, because they're not like they're not as important as I initially think they are. So Mikkel becoming Michael, if that is correct, I think that will probably be answered by the end of this season, would be my guess.
Okay.
That seems like a fairly natural kind of time for that to be revealed. But the Noah thing, I wouldn't be surprised if Noah is this kind of, like in Inspector Gadget, how you never actually saw the claw. Like I wouldn't be surprised if like Noah occupied that kind of territory in this, where he's just this unseen Machiavellian evil that manipulates things from the shadows.
Okay, yeah, I like that. All right, pretty cool. So we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. I'm really interested by that now, because as things get revealed throughout the show, I love the idea that we're all in on your theories. So like,
you can laugh at me.
I just know that everyone. I think someone put in the comments. I can't remember who it was. They put in the comments saying something like, "Whenever Konrad's going through a theory or speaking, does anyone else smile evilly?"
Nice. As a sign that I'm getting a lot of stuff wrong then, but I'm happy to get it wrong.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to hearing your I'm looking forward to some of these mysteries being solved, so that even just us as friends can talk about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm glad that we agreed at the beginning of this not to, like, for you not to confirm when I got something right, because I want to get the answers to these questions when the show determines that I should get them, or not at all, because if you don't get the answer, it means it probably wasn't that important.
Yeah, but you also are assuming that you've got something right.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. I always assume I'm right until proven wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll notice I was 100% confident in my future Mikkel theory until I reflected on this episode. I was like, balls, that guy's probably Noah.
Yeah, okay.
What the dub?
This week for What the Dub, I have pinpointed the use of one word in particular.
Oh, wow.
And I'm pretty sure that it was just, I don't know. I don't know how to approach this, because it seems like they overthought it, right? So basically, it's a scene in the changing room when Magnus and Franziska are there, and Magnus shows Franziska the money and says, like, what's this, right?
Yeah.
And she says, in the subtitles, she says, "Money, you idiot." My money, right? Which translates perfectly into my mind as an English speaker. Fantastic, right? In the dub, just prepare yourself here, Konrad. She says, "Money, you schmuck."
I was telling you now, all right, this What the Dub segment, in the first episode, Alexander was voiced by a gangster. In the third episode, like a New York gangster, in the third episode, they were referring to Tronta as Tronty, which is like a Prohibition era gangster. And now they're calling people schmucks.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, is more kind of like Jewish American than gangster. But still, was this written by like, the dub was written by Woody Allen or something?
I know. What? I do not get it. Like, it's just great. I just, that word just didn't fit. It was just great. It was,
schmuck.
Yeah, it's like obviously it's a Yiddish word.
Yeah,
like, it just didn't make any sense. Like,
oh, that's so funny. And like, can you imagine a character less likely to say the word schmuck than Francisca, who's like 16?
You know, actually, this is really off topic. Well, it's on topic, but off topic. You know what I mean? I was watching the film Moana with my son today, and this just randomly, both things happened to me in the one day. The schmuck thing in Dark, but also this is Maui in Moana uses the word bupkis.
Bupkis? That's great.
A Pacific Islander
never met a Jewish person in his life.
Yeah, bupkis. So it just reminded me of that. Also in this scene, I just wanted to point out, like in the German and subtitled version, the idea of having homemade marmalade sounds, really great.
Yeah.
But whenever you translate into an American accent and start talking about, I don't believe any Americans make homemade marmalade.
No. Oh, actually, that brings me on to an interesting point. In the dub, did they say jam or did they say marmalade?
They said marmalade. Because
obviously the German, Francisca actually says marmalade, but the subtitles say jam. Jam and marmalade aren't the same thing.
No, they're not. They're definitely not the same thing.
Like, if someone offers me jam on toast, absolutely go crazy. If someone offers me marmalade on toast, like, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. What Paddington Bear called it.
Yeah.
But what? Why are they making these decisions in the dub?
Yeah.
Who is this person making these decisions?
This wild-minded person who's making creative choices that can completely change the meaning of sentences and tone of sentences.
It's absolutely crazy. Also, just as another follow-up point, who in that Doppler house? Now, I'm very serious about this. Which one of the Dopplers is making homemade marmalade?
It's got to be Peter. It's got to be Peter. Peter is the one. It's not Catherine. It's not Charlotte. Rather, like it's.
You still got Catherine.
You have. I literally wrote Catherine every single time in my notes, and then when I was reviewing it, I was like, "It's not Catherine. I need to stop doing." It's Peter. Peter is making the marmalade.
Yeah, my mind went to Peter too. To be honest with you, maybe him and Ellie make it together. But
but Ellie does all the work. Like Peter messes up the iPad by getting marmalade all over it, and like generally kind of makes a fool of himself, while Ellie actually does the hard work.
Yeah, and tells him off as well.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
A stranger from the outside.
Okay, this week we've got a load of YouTube comments. Remember, if you want to ask a question to Konrad about episode 5, make a comment underneath my pinned comment at the top. Now, there has been one or two people who didn't make a comment underneath my pinned comment. This week, they're lucky because I actually did go and make sure to check. But as we're going on through the weeks now, there's more and more comments. I think there was 100 comments when I looked at them on this video, on the previous video. So it is going to be harder to find them as we go on through the week. So please, if you can, get the comments underneath my pinned comment. I don't want to leave anyone out. I'd hate for you to watch the episode and be left out. So I'll try as much as I can to find them. But so there are a couple who got in this week, but I'm just to help yourselves, please don't do that. So unfortunately, there's been way too many questions to cover in this video. So what I'm going to do, in order to keep this video below 2 hours, I'm going to upload a separate video on Saturday. So I like the idea of answering everyone's questions because it will draw things out of Konrad, which otherwise wouldn't be drawn out of. So I want you guys to have a say in how Konrad views this show. So I don't want it to be us forgetting people's comments or just cherry picking them, at least not at this stage. When I'm leaving out 5 questions or so. So rather than have a 2-hour podcast, we'll have an extra video. If for some reason we get to the point on episode 12 or whatever where I have 100 comments to choose, well, then I'm just going to have to cherry pick at that point. But I think this week we'll do an extra video just to make sure that all your comments are heard and we get extra thoughts from Konrad. What do you think, Konrad?
Yeah, it sounds like a good plan to me.
Well, with that being said, I think that's us done this week, Konrad.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to watching more of this and seeing my theories get further blown to pieces by future revelations.
Yeah, how funny would it be if the only theory that you get properly right is the kids are evil and they're plotting everything?
I'm already convinced that's right. Don't worry, I've got that one tucked in the top pocket. That's safe.
That's great. All right, guys. So next Monday, you'll catch us talking about episode 5, which is a great episode, Konrad, just to let you know. I think that might even be one of the top rated of this series on IMDb. Not that that means anything, but you know what I mean. So make sure you get your comments for Konrad about episode 5 underneath this video. Look out for the extra comments and questions video coming out on Saturday. Apart from that, I think we just have to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.